Malcolm Hall, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a real privilege to have you here.
Thank you.
First question, tell us the story of your business, when it started, what you've been through, and where you are today.
So it started in 2001. I was living in London, looking to move back to Cape Town, getting sick of the dark skies, and looking to move back. Wanted to really, work at a place I wanted to come to work at every day. Where I'd get excited about coming to work, and I really just didn't find anything that fitted that description.
So many people, have that. I've heard so many EO members talk about coming from Joburg back down to Cape Town. I mean, it's a pull, isn't it?
It is a pull. I think my wife and I had moved over 3-4 years before that, and it was something we always wanted to live our lives in Cape Town. We're looking at settling down, all of those kinds of things. And the experience in London had been fantastic. But it was, wanting to come back, wanting to really, it became that place to work, and then it was want to really, bring our skills back and develop something, do something exciting here.
Good.
And the opportunity came around where, at the same time I had a great business network in London, and I wanted to keep in touch with that. I very much enjoyed that. So I was looking to create something that had a foot in both, firmly South African, but make use of all of those networks, the contacts and so on. The people I thoroughly enjoyed working with in London, I wanted to, develop something that I could enjoy working in Cape Town too. And really OpenBox sort of evolved from there. A lot of those people in London ended up sort of evolving towards the US, and that's, I guess, a quick summary of almost where we are today.
That's great. So was there an anchor kind of client in London that you started out with? Was it, you mentioned it evolved to the US. Can you tell us a little bit about that progression?
Yep. So I had a number of clients prior to starting OpenBox. I was a consultant working for Deloitte and then for a startup IT consultancy. That IT consultancy, investors withdrew funding, needed to sort of wind it down. Had a lot of clients that still wanted to work with me, and I still very much enjoyed working with them. So with that, they were predominantly UK, European companies, but they were typically European headquarters for US companies. So in that, when we started working with them, it was initially, our first project was out of Germany, out of Berlin, of all places. I spent quite a lot of my life while I was living in London, actually living in Berlin. But so it was for the German office of what was a multinational, but working out of the European head office in London. And that really, as our footprint within that organization grew, so we started doing more and more work and dealing more and more with the head office in New York, which led us really to, particularly with that client, and that was our kind of founding client, and has been our biggest client, to date. That footprint sort of drew us through to New York, and then we've just expanded through the US, through that client, through a lot of client referrals with their personnel.
Amazing. So, how many air miles do you have?
A lot. For a good number of years, I sort of spent 3 weeks of a month in. It was 3 years, but 3 weeks of a month in New York, and then the fourth week would be split between Cape Town and London. So I was kind of doing a triangulation, and it was brutal in terms of amount of flying. At one point I was flying more than it was legal for an airline pilot to actually be in the air.
Wow.
And I did that for quite a number of months, in fact years.
It's amazing the things we do to build our businesses, though.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Enormous. So how did that man? I mean, so you were building a kind of a developer base back here. Maybe you can just give us a little sense of what OpenBox does. It's a software development company, and we realize it specializes, but has anchor clients. But for a software development company, you would have had to build a developer base back here while you're kind of client facing overseas. How How does that reconcile?
So we're a software development company, but I think critically we're custom software development. So we're as much a consultancy as we are a software development company, in that we're not building a product once and then selling it to 100 companies. We're building it very specifically to the need of our particular client, and we may build something similar for another client, but it's very specific to their needs. The only crossover is our knowledge of that process and so on and so forth. And it's owned by the client. That's a kind of critical difference. Sort of clients there, team here was made possible with my co-founder, Richard Hartley. Somebody, I could really trust from the get-go. He was here, had a very strong development background. My development background is weak at, is being very diplomatic and positive about it, I guess. Generous is probably a good way to describe that. So he very strong development background, had a great network of people as well. I had no network in Cape Town at all, and he brought that to the party, and really ran the delivery side of the organization while I ran the sort of sales, the account management, the client management side of things. And together we put together OpenBox.
It's amazing. It speaks to the need of that of strong partners in
absolutely.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, we could actually go on forever. I'm fascinated in your business, so I must stop myself. Tell us how you became a member of EO.
I met Adrian, who's the sort of membership chair. He's a family friend. My sister-in-law is a good friend of his, and unbeknownst to me, he was actually running in Cape Town a similar business to what OpenBox Software is, or a part of his business was very similar. Janet, my sister-in-law, kind of mentioned it to me, and Adrian and I got together, really just talking about the challenges and sharing ideas. And towards the end of that conversation, he said, he's getting involved in this organization, looks really interesting, and described EO to me. It sounded really great. It was very much, I think, early days for him because this was sort of 4 years ago, even 4.5 years ago, and so a little while passed and he got back in touch with me to say, actually, are you interested? And the idea of having a number of other entrepreneurs, the key part being CEO and founder, that kind of combination, really being around other people who have those challenges, who go through those, emotional pulls and so on and so forth was very appealing to me because I didn't know a lot of other people. Didn't know a lot of other people at a senior business level in Cape Town, but also just entrepreneurs.
I get that. I've had the same experience, and Adrian got me too. Final question: best business tip for entrepreneurs these days? I mean, you obviously had a lot of business experience, and difficult to always define the best one, but top of mind, a great business tip.
I think I would come back to a little bit of what I spoke about a little earlier. Richard, his impact to me personally, but to the business was enormous. And the key around that is really, so my advice to a budding entrepreneur would be find a person who complements your strengths and weaknesses. There may be some overlap, and that would be fantastic because you'll probably understand each other a bit better. But finding that person who can fill your weaknesses, that you can fill theirs, and that you can really, really trust. That will really be, a godsend, and it will mean the likelihood of success is just so much greater.
Thank you. That's solid. Malcolm, thanks so much for joining us today.
Sure.
Great to have you here.
Absolutely.
Good.
Thank you.